Hey, welcome to More of Jesus. This is Pastor Amy. Today's Valentine's Day. It's February 14th. And we're going to talk about today, who is your soulmate? And have you found your soulmate yet? That is a question that many of us anticipate and wonder and look for as we grow up in this culture that teaches us about this whole idea of true love. I almost think that true love is almost like its own religion, because you hear people say, do you believe in true love? You know, like almost like it's its own religion. And have you found your soulmate yet? And you look at people that are like, they found their soulmate. Ooh, they're going to be happy forever. Is that something we should still be looking for? Is it out there for us if we haven't found a soulmate yet? Some of us think we have found a soulmate. Have you? What does Jesus have to say about this? I want to bring us to Matthew chapter 22. Starting in verse 23, there's a group of people, a religious sect that doesn't believe in an afterlife, in what they call a resurrection, that after you die, they think that when you die, you just die and you're dead in the ground. Verse 23, it says, that same day the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to Jesus with a question. Teacher, they said, Moses told us that if a man dies without having children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for him. That was one of their laws, one of their rules, to honor the brother that died and to raise up offspring for that brother. Now, then they have this hypothetical situation. There were 7 brothers in one family, and the first one married this woman and died. And then since he had no children, he left his wife to his brother. It was his next brother's responsibility to marry her. And that same thing happened to the second brother and the third brother, and these men just kept dying all the way up till the 7th brother. And then the woman died. And the Sadducees asked Jesus, now then, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be out of these 7 men? In the afterlife, whose wife will she be, since they were all married to her? Interesting how they could not conceive of a woman having multiple husbands. They could only conceive of a man having multiple wives. And so they ask, whose wife is she going to be in the resurrection, in the afterlife? And here is Jesus's response. They're talking about resurrection, but we get a glimpse about Jesus's view on romance, sex, marriage. Here we go. Jesus says in verse 29, you are in error because you do not know the scriptures or the power of God. He says, in the resurrection, or in the afterlife, in other words, people will not marry or be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. And he goes on and talks more about it. But what Jesus is saying is, marriage as you have conceived it in your culture is a temporary, very earthly kind of thing. There's no forever, everlasting, eternal soulmates. They're sort of asking who is going to be her soulmate for eternity. And Jesus is saying that doesn't happen. That's not the point of marriage. In the afterlife, people will all be like the angels. So I take that to mean angels are asexual beings. People will just be asexual. Marriage, sex, romance, that's a very temporary arrangement. It doesn't last forever. There's something deeper and more profound and more everlasting than that. You're putting your emphasis on this thing, this marriage thing that you feel like encompasses your eternity. It doesn't. Now, don't get me wrong. Marriage, when it's done well and when people treat one another well on this earth, even if it's temporary, can be a wonderful way to show people how to care for one another, how to treat one another. An example, a reflection of the kind of love that God has for people. It can be like that. It can also be a source of stability, a source of economic help, a source of comfort, to have someone you know that always has your back. Again, when marriage is done well, when people are faithful to one another and treat one another well and love one another the way that Jesus loves. Marriage has value for this earth, but it is not eternal. Jesus doesn't say there is no resurrection or afterlife. He says you don't understand the afterlife because you don't understand the power of God to encompass you in a love that is more satisfying, more gratifying, deeper than any kind of earthly love you can imagine, even the love found between two spouses. Jesus is the lover of our souls. Jesus' love, the love between creator and created one, is the most profound, most precious, most eternal kind of love that there is, and it will last forever. So don't get confused about who your Valentine is this Valentine's Day. Who your soulmate is, who the lover of your soul is. It is Jesus.